there we go. Recording in progress. Lee Hamilton, mediator in Portland, Oregon. I actually went to Reed College, if you're familiar with that. Spent lots of time in Portland. It's great. Kathy Campbell, great to have you here. Attorney practicing collaborative family law. So you are a colleague of Jacinta's, I imagine. Great. Ken Markley, family mediator in Vancouver. Hey, Ken. Catherine Ali from Ireland. Great. Catherine, so nice to have you join. Kim Gordon, mediator, collaborative attorney, Portland, again, represent. We got Tonya Brock, family mediator from Ontario. Great. And Elena, she is our EC community coordinator and also former Royal Road student, graduate. Thank you so much, Elena. She's been super behind the scenes support for all of our initiatives here. We've got Catherine Brink, collaborative lawyer, Jacinta, Louise, great, more collaborative folks. This is just wonderful. So how many of you are familiar with the loop? You can just raise your hand or, all right, so we definitely have some familiarity, which is good. My hope today is to give you, I'm gonna go ahead and, yeah, like that, is to give you a refresher, right? Do an overview of the insight loop. And bring you through kind of an example to reorient you to how our minds are moving. And I have another couple of activities. And of course, to get your thoughts and your questions as we go. So for that, I will start with the presentation and then I'll give some time for questions. And there's by your name, if you can see your name, I believe there's a place to raise your hand. If you look in participants, which is a button at the bottom, and then can somebody, since I'm a presenter, I don't see how to raise your hand. Can somebody help share how to do that?
It's under reactions.
Okay, so there's the clap.
Yep, but
That's under reactions. Raise hand. That, and there's all, there we go, Tonya.
At the bottom bar.
Okay.
Is raise hand.
Oh, great. At the bottom bar, raise hand. So if you have a question, have a thought, want to jump in, please use that function. All right. Great. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump in. So today we are going to be talking about the insight loop. And the insight loop was developed by MPrice based on the work of Bernard Lonergan. And it's a representation of the pattern flow of our minds as we come to know, discern significance, and decide to act. And it's a key image in the insight approach because it illustrates the variables of our interiority, which guide the insight approach's method of discovery. So we're interested in understanding kind of what's the thinking, what's the thought process, what's the meaning, what are the feelings behind decisions that we make. What's useful about the loop is that it guides our attention to the movement of our own minds, and then by extension, the movement of the minds of others. And this isn't to say at all that we know what other people are thinking, right? That leads us down the dangerous road of assuming. So it's not about knowing what other people are thinking. It's really about understanding the pattern in which we think as we know, value, and decide to act. And that can help us discover what is actually driving our own or another person's decision-making. And this matters because we tend to be outwardly focused, right? We're not inwardly focused. We pay more attention to the thing we're responding to or the thing that's right before our eyes than what's leading us to respond in a particular way, or what's making us feel a particular way, or how we even know. We don't really pay attention to that interior data. We're more focused on, you know, the pencil in front of me, or the lamp, or the computer, the thing, the objects that we're attentive to. So what the loop does is it reorients us towards that inner the interiority of knowing, of how we understood something, of valuing, which is how we feel about something, the significance of it, and then of course, how we've come to make a decision. So when we can do that, when we can kind of heighten our awareness of our interiority and then the interiority of others, we position ourselves to better understand ourselves and then better understand other people. And through that, make choices that are in line with who we are and who we want to be, right? That are less likely to engage us in conflict and more likely to engage us in growth and creativity. So I'm going to share my screen and show you that the image of the loop. Okay, so here it is. So what I'd like to do is take you through the loop, okay? And one thing to mention at the get-go, let me admit Gwen here, is that this image is a snapshot. It's a slice. It's like a specimen that you put under a microscope, right? So we're looking at one kind of instant in time of our pattern flow of consciousness, of this pattern in which we use our minds to come to know, value, and decide to act. So this is a static image of an instant, okay? And we're actually looping all the time. So it's not just a tool, right? I mean, it's a tool to understand ourselves, but we're looping day in, day out. I'm looping right now, you're looping right now. The only time we're not using our minds in this way is when we might be in some sort of dreamless sleep or in a coma, right? So even when we're dreaming, we use our minds in this particular pattern. And so since we're always going, if there's not really a beginning and an end, but I'm going to start with experiencing because it's the most kind of visceral of all of these operations. So I'm going to outline the 7 operations of this pattern flow of consciousness. Like I said, this was developed by MPrice. And then I'm going to give you an example to help us kind of ground this image in our own experience. So let's start. So the 7 operations are experiencing here, understanding, verifying, and that constitutes this lower loop of knowing. Oops. Knowing, okay? And then there's valuing, deliberating, evaluating, and deciding. And all of that culminates into acting, into actions that are in the world, okay? So experiencing is when we apprehend data, right? So it's the data of the outside, from the outside world. So those data of sense, sight, smell, taste, touch, sound. It's also data of interiority, right? So it might be an inkling or a thought or a feeling or an imagining or a future. So we're experiencing data, right? It's not interpreted yet, but the data comes in, and spontaneously, as human beings, we want to know what it is. So we ask ourselves, if we're attentive to it, we ask ourselves, what is it? What is that thing that I've just experienced? What is that light shining in my eye from outside, right? I'm sensing the data from outside. I am wondering, what is it? And so in this operation of understanding, where we ask this question, what is it? We come up with hypotheses that answer that question. Well, it could be my lamp reflecting off my window. It could be the light is on in the basement well. It could be a candle, whatever, right? And so based on our past experience and what we know and all those things, we move on to the third operation here, which is verifying. Is it so? Is what I think I've understood of my experience accurate? So, well, I know there's no candle out there. And the light shouldn't be on because it's the middle of the day. So it's probably the reflection of my lamp in the window shining into my eye, okay? So you can really take any experience and spin it through the loop to start to understand this pattern. So experience, light, understanding, what is it? Verify, is it so? Yes, that light is shining in my eye and it's a reflection of my lamp. Okay, so once we are pretty sure that we've got a good idea of something, whether or not it's accurate, but if we feel like we know and we're certain about it, then generally and it can even be a certainty of unknowing, right? So this is very flexible. But once we feel like we know, then the next operation is valuing. And so what happens is that there's a felt sense, kind of a feeling accompanies this knowing. So here I have this on this loop here, feeling, right? And that feeling is an emotion, is a felt sense, and it answers this question: what is the significance of this? How does this matter to me, right? And part of that significance is this projection of an imagined future. Okay, so I have this feeling about knowing that there's the lamp is shining in my eye from the reflection, and it's kind of the feeling is kind of a feeling of annoyance, right? Like, oh, this light in my eye is not that comfortable. And the future is that if it persists, then it might hurt my eye, right? So there's this feeling, and it tells me how this light that's reflecting matters, right? And that's linked to an imagined future where I'm just gonna, for the next hour, there's gonna be this light in my eye and it's gonna be really uncomfortable. So we've come to know, we've discerned significance in what we know, and spontaneously we react, right? We move into this upper loop, this doing loop here. So we go from experiencing, understanding, verifying, valuing, to the DED, deliberating, evaluating, and deciding. And that's the doing loop. It's where we come to determine what to do in response. Okay, so this imagined future is the persistence of the light in my eye. Okay, so what am I going to do about it, right? Well, first I want to know, I need to come up with options. So deliberating is this operation here where we ask ourselves, what can I do? What are my options for responding to this light in my eye? Well, I could turn off my lamp. I could move positions. I could, probably those two. What else? What else could I do? There are probably other options that just aren't occurring to me right now. And then you go, okay, so these are my options. I could move the lamp, I could shut it off, I could I could move myself, I could pull the curtain. And then from those, again, we need to choose one. What's the best that will satisfy this future of mine, right? Where I've got this annoying light in my eye. So what should I do? Well, I could also do nothing, right? That's another option. I could do absolutely nothing. So what should I do? Should I turn it off? Well, if I turn it off, then the camera doesn't look right for the Zoom, right? If I move positions, and you'll see the mess over there, and I don't want you to see the mess, right? So there's some emotion and some valuing that goes along with this evaluating process. So I'm just what I'm gonna do is I'm going to do nothing, because I think that the having the light on is more important than the discomfort that the shining light. It's more important than ending that discomfort. So will I commit? Yes. So this is deciding. So you move from deliberating, what can I do, evaluating, what should I do, what's best here, to will I commit, to deciding. And that becomes an action in the world. And so my action is like maybe squinting for the rest of the hour or whatever it might be, but it's an action. I'm really not too fazed by the light, but it becomes an action in the world. And so every time we act, every time we do something, we engage in behavior, it's in response to, it's a decision that's based on a feeling about something that we think we know, something that we've determined to be true, whether or not it's accurate. So I have another way to kind of pull you through the loop and do this together. And what I'd like, so that's a quick overview of our minds, of this pattern flow of how we come to know, value, and decide to act. But to help personalize it for you, I have an activity where I'd like you to imagine that we're going to the grocery store, that you're going to the grocery store, that it's 4:30 and you need to get dinner, you need to get stuff for dinner, and you're going to make a Thai curry, right? So you're shopping for dinner, you get to the store, you like to have dinner at around 6. So you're kind of, so you're doing your shopping. So you walk through, you walk through the front door, you're making Thai curry. So you need your basil and you need your eggplant and your peppers and your garlic and your ginger and all this stuff. And so you put all that in your cart, right? So you're looping this whole time. Yep, you're grabbing the nicest eggplant, the plumpest garlic, all that. You're walking through the store. You turn down the canned goods aisle where the coconut milk should be, and it's not there. The shelf is completely empty. So from the loop, okay, so what is, I'm going to go ahead and let's see, what's the best way to do this? When we see that empty shelf, where are we on the loop there? We're experiencing, right? So first, oops, there's a chat. Did somebody respond? Yes, exactly. We're experiencing data. There is a shelf, it is empty, there's metal shelf, there's nothing there. And because we're using our mind so very quickly, right, we know what that is. We know that if the shelf is empty, what is it? No coconut milk. That's where the coconut milk goes, and it's not there. So is it so? Yes. There is no coconut milk where there should be coconut milk. We're again experiencing the data. There's a tag that says coconut milk, $1.99, and there's nothing there to actually purchase. Okay, so from that, right, a feeling follows that realization, right? That knowing. What feeling might you have? Go ahead and pop it in the chat. Okay, disappointment. Anybody else? Frustration. Yeah. Confusion. Where the heck is the coconut milk? Panic, perhaps. What am I going to do? Yeah. Okay. So there are all these possibilities for how we might feel depending on who we are, depending on how hurried we might be in our dinner making, shopping. So that feeling, right, tells us the significance of this not having any coconut milk, right? So what might the significance be? What might frustration tell us about how it matters that there's no coconut milk? We won't have our planned meal. Thank you very much. So that future, right, is, oh my God, I got all the nice stuff in my cart. I have the rice in the rice cooker. I'm planning on this Thai curry, and my plans are dashed, right? So there's a significance there in that frustration. What about confusion? What do you think, Marnie, you said confusion, would that lead to a similar kind of significance? Or is there something else that's possible? Oh, shoot. Was there a sale I missed? There we go. Right. So there's different possibilities for kind of the answer to these questions. The significance varies depending on who we are and what our context is. So, but nonetheless, that variable of valuing projects us forward. So we've come to know no coconut milk. We felt, darn it, there's panic, confusion, frustration, all those things. There's this future where I might have to change my dinner plans. Yeah, so that feeling moves us into that upper loop of doing, right? Well, what can I do now? What should I do? What will I do, right? So Ken says, can I use chicken broth? Right? So we're deliberating. There are possibilities. What are the options? Maybe I can use chicken broth. Where's the next closest store? Did they move it to a different spot? Should I ask? Right? I mean, these are great. Do I need to make another stop? how can I hack how can I hack into a whole coconut? Oh, yogurt, right? So like all these options are generated. These are all possibilities. And this is happening in our deliberating. What can I do? And then do they have more in the back, right? And so that's going to lead us to, what should I do? What should I do? Should I should I go for the whole coconut, or should I track down an employee, right? And see if somebody can double check the back, right? Or should I pick up should I Google it, right? I mean, there are different things to do. And will I commit? Yep, I'm going to tackle the whole coconut if I were Marnie, or I'm going to ask the store clerk. And that becomes an action in the world, right? So that becomes me tapping on the man's shoulder, asking if there's more coconut milk, or, lugging the whole coconut home. So all of that interiority is going on behind that simple action of tapping on the guy's shoulder, of checking my phone, of grabbing for the yogurt, of hauling the whole coconut, right? And so this is that pattern, right? It's that pattern that's happening all the time. Make a different curry, right? That's totally an option. But all of these things become available in our minds based on the valuing of what we know, which is no more coconut milk. So I'm going to stop there for a second and see if there are any thoughts or questions on that before I move on to the next thing to consider around this looping. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions at this point? Okay, please.
I have a question, if you don't mind.
Oh, sorry, Tanya.
I feel like it's Tanya. Like,
oh, sorry. I'm sorry, Tanya.
it's spelled Tony, but it said Tanya. It seems like it'd be contextual though. Like if this is a meal I'm preparing for my parents who think I can't put my life together, and I always mess up and I'm always asking for money, and no, I'm really going to prove it to you this time. I got it together, and I go to get the coconut milk and it's not there. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to have access to all these creative, or I don't feel like I'd have access to all these creative options, or what. There's a flight, fight, whatever, freeze response that might kick in if contextually it's too overloading for me. So how does that fit into the loop?
Oh, well, that's wonderful. And actually you set me up for the next piece of the loop. That's really, really important. So what if not having the coconut milk is so threatening that I can't even think of something else to do? I'm just totally stuck or frozen. I just collapse weeping in front of this empty shelf, right? Because of exactly what you said, all that backstory. So let me share you again. Here we go. Okay. So two things really. One, we have these wavy lines here are called carriers of consciousness. And that's really the context that sets the horizon for how we know, how we're valuing, what our options are. So perhaps our role as child of parents who are judging us and we don't feel like we are adequate, right? So our roles and our context absolutely shape our looping. And they affect our performance. So each of these operations of consciousness here, experiencing, understanding, verifying, valuing, deliberating, evaluating, and deciding, are things that we do. So as operations, they're things that we do, we perform them more or less well. And I use the word performance in terms of we activate each of these operations, not as though we perform them on a stage or for anybody else, right? So let me share the performance ranges with you. We can be in our looping more or less mindful. Mindful is when we're kind of our performance is expansive and we're attentive to who we are in our role, to how we're coming to know, valuing, deciding, or we can be kind of truncated or contracted in our performance, where we are it's like you were talking about, Tanya. So the options aren't available. We're contracted, right? So each of these operations of consciousness, from experiencing all the way through deciding, has a performance range. So with experiencing, we can be attentive, which is kind of that expanded performance, where we are open to the data, right? Or we can be inattentive, where we're kind of narrow, right? So we're only seeing the one spot where we know coconut milk usually is, maybe it moved, right? But we're just inattentive to other possibilities, right, of data. So experiencing, attentive to inattentive. In our understanding, we can be curious, and that's the expanded performance on the range of curious to incurious, where we're not really asking questions. We don't, we're pretty sure that what we understand of our experience, there's only a couple of options for understanding it. In verifying, we can be critical, which is our expanded performance, to hasty, which is that contracted or truncated performance. So we're not really garnering enough evidence. We're not really checking out why we think we know when we're hasty. We're just kind of jumping to conclusions. We're assuming, we are knowing out of habit or routine. So that patterns our valuing, which can be discerning, which is that expanded performance, where we are attentive to our feelings and what they're telling us, the message that they're sending around the significance of what we think we know. Or reactive, where we're just kind of had by our feelings and we embody them with that stress response, right? We're not really attentive to why we are feeling a particular way. We just are. And then as we deliberate, right, what can I do? We can be imaginative in our responses, or we can be limited in our responses. And really, it's not and or, it's on a range. So if I'm valuing that there's no coconut, and it's going to completely ruin my coconut milk, it's going to completely ruin my dinner plans, and my parents are going to think that I'm a complete mess up, then my valuing is threat. It's going to be reactive. I'm going to be more limited in my deliberating because of that stress response, and that's contracting our capacity to think critically, right? And so evaluating then performance ranges, expanded would be conscientious. How is what I come to think that I should do in line with either achieving the future that I'm hoping for, or preventing the future that I'm worried about? We can be rash, where we move again like quickly through, I can only do one thing, which is just collapse here and cry. And then deciding, we are either free in our expanded performance, where we feel like our decision is good, it's authentic, it's in line with who we are and how we want to be in the world, or it's constrained, it's defensive, it's hemmed in by our own contracted performance ultimately, or our fears, or the valuing that is getting in our way. So absolutely, context and carriers influence our performance, right? And generally, the more contracted we are in our performance and the way that we're using our minds, the more contracted we become. So we tend to be, if we're inattentive to the data, we're more likely to be incurious, hasty, reactive, limited, rash, and constrained in our deciding, right? When we're more open, then we're more likely to be attentive, to be curious, to be critical, to be discerning, imaginative, conscientious, and free, right? And so that's where we want to go when we are interveners in conflict. We want ourselves, and we want to help people move from that truncated performance, that contracted performance that happens in conflict, particularly when we feel threatened, when our valuing discerns significance that is threatening. We want to move from that real truncated, contracted performance to expansive. And we do that by getting curious. And we do that and we can become curious when we have this image of the loop helps us become curious about how, what is the significance? What is that feeling telling you? Where is it coming from? What are you worried is going to happen? What's that future? What's the impact, right? What are you worried about when it comes to your parents? And, when we're curious about, okay, so how is crumbling on the floor and crying in front of the coconut milk shelf gonna help, gonna make a difference, gonna protect you, right? Maybe there's some other options that can be generated for making this relationship better. And then again, like, how do you know they're gonna judge you, right? How do you know? Where's the knowing coming from? And are you sure? Is it so? So when we have this and we understand that there's this particular pattern, when you see a decision, when you see an action, there's a decision based on a feeling or a valuing about something we think we know, that really guides our discovery. Okay. So how does that sit? What are your thoughts or feelings or questions on kind of that loop and the performance ranges that are operative there? Oh, Louise, you had a question before, and I'm sorry if I missed that.
I was thinking that there are plenty of situations where that whole loop happens in practically split seconds, and other times where, we might be working with clients and they have to make a decision, and it's a very long, slow process in arriving at their final decision. Some people need a lot of data. Other people need, kind of make decisions more on a gut basis. So just kind of, what are your thoughts about how all that kind of fits into the loop?
How fast or how slow it goes?
Yeah, I mean, am I thinking correctly in terms of all of that is still the same loop process? It's just either elongated or it happens really fast based on various variables.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So in the routine of our day-to-day, right, we're looping along. We're just going. We tend to loop fast when we are in conflict, right? And we're reactive. If it's hot, I'm going to throw my pencil at you. I'm going to yell at you. We're not thinking, right? Okay. But when we are wondering about taking our kid out of school because he's having a really bad experience, like, that's a huge decision. And there might be a lot of thinking, a lot of deliberating, a lot of evaluating. There might be a lot of not acting until you can get a better sense of what the implications are around that decision. So it's the same loop. It's the same pattern. It's just different decisions, right?
Linked to kind of the magnitude of the decision that is needing to be made.
Yeah. I think so. Mm-hmm. Linked to how you're performing ultimately. So when I think and I only say that because I think there might be a lot of magnitude around, punching your spouse in the nose, right? I mean, that's like huge, and that could ripple effect for a long time. But that's reactive, and you just do it in the heat of the moment. Taking your kid out of school, you also have that space to imagine various impacts and other scenarios and other things. So there's also could be okay, this is the last time that kid is going to bully my child, and so I just yank them from school. Like, this is the last straw, and I don't even think about it. I think what it boils down to is, if we go back to that performance range, it's like, how conscientious am I being in my evaluating what the best thing to do is? How imaginative am I around thinking about what my options are for my son? What's really leading me? What's the valuing that's really leading me to do this? What is the significance, and is moving him the best thing? So checking in, if when we're expanded, it may take us longer to make decisions because we're really we can pay attention to our interiority. So I think it comes down more to the performance than it does necessarily to the type of decision. Only because I can see the same decision being made conscientiously or being made, in a rash way. Jacinta?
Well, it's interesting because I think in our family practitioner collaborative community, we often see this as well as a process. So when we're engaging with clients and we want to enhance their ability to make those decisions, not rashly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering as well, Louise, was that part of your thinking on this? Because we can't help it. We just keep coming back to process. Those of us that are on this call, I think, like I love the loop to think about, we want to enhance people's ability to be participating in decision-making at their best and most conscientious selves. And so the quick thing that's happening in our own experiences, I often think in terms of it happening when I'm an intervener, and it's not the same, but there's so many parallels. I that's what I love about it. And yet when I really spend time getting into it as my interiority, that I'm making a much more, that I'm understanding it a lot more at a deeper level. So what's interesting as a practitioner is we see it as part of our choices around intervening as well. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. So thank you for that, Jacinta. I mean, it sounds like what you're saying, and I think it's very, very true, is that as an intervener, somebody who is working with conflict, we want to, pay attention to our own looping, because it's really important in terms of how we decide to intervene, what questions we ask, where we are in the process. And the intention is often to help the parties who we're interacting with improve their performance from that reactive, stuck place that threat and conflict does to us, to a more expansive, how do I know what is this feeling telling me actually, and what should I do? I mean, how should I respond? Maybe my position on this is not helpful and isn't really moving my family towards the place where that's best for my family. Yeah, absolutely. There any other questions, thoughts? So I have one more. Lee, did you have something?
Well, I was just thinking that it would be super helpful for me. This has been so helpful already, but to moments that I get triggered outside of working with clients, or, just my own moments, is to take those moments and, maybe even write it down and just try and understand my own trigger through the loop. And I think if I could do that enough times, that it might move into my work better. So just a thought.
So what do you mean your trigger through the loop?
So if something that happens to me during the day where I react, I have a strong reaction, and don't make a great decision about it, is to take that particular situation and actually work through the loop to see from the very beginning until the very end, and where I was on that performance continuum, and where I sort of fell down, as opposed to being curious or making better decisions. But it might be helpful for me to actually, go through that in small pieces of moments in my life when I am triggered and make a rash decision that isn't a very good one.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. And what I would point you to is that when you are triggered, or when you're feeling reactive, right? That's you valuing. When we have those emotions that rise, that's an indicator, it's a communicator that there's something is significant. So just share this again. So I would suggest, right, starting here, what is my feeling, and what is it telling me about how this matters? What do I think is going to happen? What's the future that I'm imagining? And is that so, right? And then kind of test it against the knowing that sparked that valuing. And then going back to your decision making, how did that align with my valuing? And that just it generates insights. It gives you it puts you more in touch with your own interiority and allows you to determine whether or not, well, yep, that was the right thing to do, or actually maybe I should have done something different, or maybe there were more options, or there are options now for, following up in one way or another. Yeah, I think that's a really great practice, to catch those moments of valuing in particular. So I do have, were there any other thoughts or questions to bring up now? Okay, I have one more activity, again, to just kind of put the loop in your head. So understanding the loop, right? It heightens our awareness and sparks our curiosity. So with the loop in mind, when we see people engaged in actions or behavior, we know that there's that decision-making process at play. That's responding to feelings about what we think we know, and we can actually get curious and wonder about that. So what I want to do is take a look at a couple of short clips and an image. And what I would like you to do is write in the chat the first thing that comes to you when you see the clip or the image. Okay. What do you think when you see this? I see that Shauna, you raised your hand. So here we see, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you see this? Go ahead and type it in the chat. Oh, ridiculous, says Kathy. Big mess to clean up, says Jacinta. A mess, what a mess that has to be cleaned up. A funny mess, funny and angry panda. Yes, okay. I'm gonna stop that, cool. So there are a number of reactions. Some are, right? So I guess so there are two things here that I want to point out, right? For those of you who responded, and even if you didn't type it in the chat, where are you in your pattern flow of thinking? Where are you in the loop when you responded with funny gif, bear is mad, where else? Big mess to clean up, ridiculous. Where are you on the loop? Are you in the knowing? Are you kind of interpreting it? Are you in the valuing where you have a feeling about it? Is this your felt response, or are you deciding in some way? What the F? Okay, Jacinta, valuing. Kathleen, knowing. Okay, imagine future. So that's kind of the valuing. Kathy says deciding. Okay, so Jacinta, I saw you, a big mess to clean up. Okay, and so for you, that's the valuing, your valuing of it. Like, oh God, I'd hate to clean up that mess. Is that right? Yeah, absolutely. And we have Tanya. What did you say? What a mess that has to be cleaned up. Absolutely. There's this future, there's the valuing, there's the significance. Kathleen, knowing. What did you say? I'm looking. Angry panda. Yes. Interpretation. There is an angry panda doing its thing. Very cool. So, so we can pay attention to ourselves just by looking at this very silly GIF, right? This really silly video, and there's valuing, there's knowing going on. Maybe there's even deciding. Kathy, let's see, Kathy, there's some deciding. Maybe you don't want to look at it. Maybe you close your eyes because you think it's so annoying. But again, that deciding is patterned by valuing, right? So what about the panda? Where's the panda in his loop? What is he expressing? So we've looked at our loops, but what about the panda? Okay, so he's mad. So he's expressing his valuing. Okay, so there's that. What else is he expressing? He looks mad, or he wants to decide. Okay, Jacinta says deciding to act. So we can see in his body language his anger, right? And so we can see his valuing being expressed. We can also see his decision. What's his decision? Or her? I don't even know. Yeah. Fluffing the flower. This panda has decided to spray the flour all over the chef. Okay. And so when we can recognize that, okay, so this is an angry panda. Oh my God, what a mess. When we can separate our own looping from the looping of the panda, then we can get curious. Panda, what made you want to spread that flour all over the chef, right? What was good about that decision? What were you trying to achieve? What was your hope? What was the aim there? Or, wow, panda, you must be really mad. You know, what's got you so angry, right? Where is your anger coming from? And then how do you think spraying that flour everywhere is going to help, right? So you can link the deciding and the valuing because you know that they're connected. Every decision is made in response to the valuing, to the feeling of significance. Looks like a very satisfying way to express frustration or anger. There's absolutely, and Jacinta, there you are valuing, right, what you're seeing. So that's your loop coming across in the chat. Okay, I have two more. Let's see. So here's our panda. Oops, I'm watching it myself and I'm not sharing it with you. Okay. Here's another one. What about this? So write what's the first thing that comes to mind when you see this? Annoyed, get over yourself, dismissive, dismissing, teenagers. Okay. So to me, this seems more like interpretation of what that eye roll means. Is that right? So it's dismissive. She's saying, get over yourself to whomever. So, so that's our knowing. That's the interpretation that we have of her expression of what. Where is she in her loop to be expressing that? Knowing, valuing, or deciding. Valuing. Okay, good. Kathleen says valuing. Catherine says deciding. So in what way is it valuing? Is she expressing valuing? Kathleen, if you don't mind.
The words that come to my mind that she's saying to herself are kind of like seriously. And so she's well, it's the dismissive part. It's she's not valuing what somebody else is saying, or she's undervaluing what they're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she's expressing her feeling about whatever she's interpreting. So whatever somebody else is saying or doing or whatever, right? So by that eye roll, we can notice her expression of emotion, and that shows us that she's valuing right there. At the same time, we say Catherine so there's always this connection. So Catherine, what makes you say deciding?
Well, just that she decided to do an eye roll. Like that was like the outcome, her reaction was an eye roll. So
Yeah. So on the one hand, I mean, there is like some deciding, well, she could have just kept it in, but instead she really made her feeling known there. So there's a bit of deciding going on, right? And you could wonder about that. What made you want to roll your eyes, right? Or you could say, wow, you seem really annoyed about what's going on, like what's annoying you. So you can take either of those clues to guide your curiosity. And when you know that the deciding is linked to the valuing, then you can really work with that and understand what's going on for the other person. Mariano.
Hi there.
Hi.
Question. So if we treat this like we're at a call or something like that, where we're face to face, somebody does the eye roll, that's the action. And then I put value on it and I say, this person's not interested, or they're dismissive, or whatever it was in the chat box, right? So it was my valuing, giving her action meaning, right? And then
you're interpreting her expression.
Her expression, and then I ask verifying questions to make sure that I'm not jumping to conclusions, right? Is that the way this works, right? So then no, sorry, I cut you off.
No, yeah. So that would be when we get into the skills. Yes, you notice, you verify. Kim, that's Kim Kardashian. Kim, I can see you're really annoyed. Kim, it seems like you're really annoyed by this, right? So you've interpreted that she's expressing a feeling. What's her feeling? So you would reflect that. Kim, I think it sounds like you're really annoyed, or it looks like you're really annoyed. So go ahead, keep going.
No, so when I look at this flow, right, this infinity or figure eight, I see that they're proportional, right? The knowing and the doing seem proportional on the graphic, but when it's actually happening in real life, they could be different sizes, right? I could spend more time on the knowing part and less time on the doing part, intuitively.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that the shape, the size of the loop is more for our own aesthetic than it is an actual depiction of our, of our mind or significant there, because it depends on where we are spending time. And so for you, if you are using insight tools to understand this eye roll, understand Kim's like dismissive posture, right? Then you have decided to spend more time understanding where she's coming from, to get a good picture of what's going on for her that's leading her to respond to you in this particular way. And when you get all that information, that's like, so you're understanding, you're curious in your understanding, and you become critical in your verifying. Oh, so it's not really that she's annoyed at me, or maybe she is. She doesn't like that I keep knocking on her door, or I don't stop calling her because I really want her autograph. Oh, okay, so you're just really annoyed because I'm not giving you any space, Kim. I don't know, whatever it might be, but you get that information to understand where she's coming from. So you, as the intervener in this case, are spending time, or have decided, right, to get curious about her and understand where she's coming from, so that your knowing is critical. Then your valuing of that will be probably more discerning than reactive, and you can decide in a free way how to respond. Yeah. Thanks for the question. All right, we just have a couple more minutes. Any other kind of thoughts on the loop, or wonderings and clings, reactions, reflections? So, Kathy.
I was just going to say, it's interesting looking at the different places on the loop and how helpful it is to actually help you form questions and identify the questions. Like it's almost like a cheat sheet in that respect. It's really, really helpful.
Yeah. Awesome. It can. So, I mean, using this as a guide, right, to better understand ourselves and to better understand others, and how to discover really that interiority, that patterning how we are and how we're acting in the world. Yeah. Great. All right. Well, so definitely, I wanted to share an article that I wrote on the loop. I think I can just, we can send it out as well, but I wanted to just drop it in the chat. I think I can do that. Hold on. Oh, wait. No, I can't. Well, I'll just, we can send it to you. But that it talks about, it's a chapter in a book that I wrote, but it talks about the loop and it kind of goes into all of this. And so you can have it as a resource. Kathleen, did you have something?
No, I was just clapping and I left my mute on. or
Okay,
taken my
okay,
mute off.
All right, yeah, I'll share those 2 slides. I don't know if you want the GIF, but you can have that too. And oh, this is not the Change Through Curiosity article. This one is called, the one that I'd like to share is called, what is it called? Okay, it's called Intentional Peace, the Role of Human Consciousness in the Emergence of Peace and Conflict. So for what it's worth, we'll send it. All right, thank you all for joining, and we look forward to seeing you at future EC events. Have a wonderful evening or afternoon, wherever you are.